The old Jeep rumbled down the dirt road, its headlights cutting through the dense woods. Alex gripped the steering wheel, Emily hummed beside him, and Mark, in the back, scanned the darkening woods nervously. They were city kids on a weekend getaway, looking for adventure in the remoteness of Blackwood Forest. The cabin emerged from the trees, a dark silhouette against the twilight sky. It was a ramshackle structure, with peeling paint and a porch that groaned under the weight of years. As Alex parked the Jeep, a shiver ran down Emily's spine. The woods were silent, except for the rustle of leaves, and the silence felt heavy, almost oppressive.
What, are you scared already, Em? It's just an old cabin.
Of course not. I'm just taking in the atmosphere.
It does feel a bit off, doesn't it?
Despite their initial reactions, they unloaded the Jeep, their voices echoing in the stillness as they carried their bags inside. The air inside the cabin was stale and cold, thick with the scent of damp wood and something indefinable, something that sent a prickle of unease across their skin. Nightfall brought a deeper chill to the Blackwood Forest. The trees, tall and ancient, seemed to close in, their branches intertwining to form a canopy that blocked out the last vestiges of daylight. The forest floor, covered in a thick layer of fallen leaves, muffled the sounds of nocturnal creatures stirring to life. The air grew colder, and a sense of foreboding settled over the landscape. Inside the cabin, the friends huddled around the fireplace, the flames casting flickering shadows that danced on the log walls. The warmth of the fire was a stark contrast to the chill outside, and the crackling of the burning wood provided a comforting background noise. The cabin, though small and rustic, felt like a sanctuary against the encroaching darkness. They shared stories, their laughter a fragile attempt to break the silence that pressed in from outside. Each tale was more outlandish than the last, filled with humor and exaggeration, as if they could ward off the unease with sheer force of will. Yet, despite their best efforts, the oppressive quiet of the forest seemed to seep through the walls, reminding them of their isolation. A log shifted in the fireplace, sending a spray of sparks up the chimney. The sudden movement drew their attention, and for a moment the room fell silent. The firelight flickered, casting long, dancing shadows that seemed to move with a life of their own. It was as if the cabin itself was alive, breathing and shifting in response to the night outside. Emily felt a prickling at the back of her neck, a sensation of being watched. She tried to shake off the feeling, telling herself it was just her imagination. But the sensation persisted, growing stronger with each passing minute. It was as if unseen eyes were tracking her every move, hidden in the darkness just beyond the firelight. She glanced over her shoulder, into the darkness beyond the circle of firelight, but saw nothing. The shadows seemed to stretch and twist, forming shapes that vanished as soon as she tried to focus on them. Her heart pounded in her chest, and she took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. The darkness outside the cabin felt alive, filled with unseen threats.
Just the fire, Mark. Relax. S3. What was that? The sudden noise had startled them all, and Mark's voice trembled slightly as he spoke. He tried to laugh it off, but the unease in his eyes was clear. The others exchanged nervous glances, their earlier bravado fading in the face of the unknown.
But as the night wore on, Emily couldn't shake off the feeling of unease. The cabin, once a haven, now felt like a trap, its walls closing in around her. Every creak and groan of the old wood seemed amplified, echoing in the silence. She tried to focus on the conversation, but her mind kept drifting back to the darkness outside. The shadows seemed to writhe and twist, taking on menacing shapes. They moved in the corners of her vision, always just out of sight. It was as if they were alive, creeping closer with each passing moment. The firelight, once comforting, now seemed to cast more shadows than it dispelled, adding to the sense of dread. She thought she heard whispers at the edge of her hearing, soft, indistinct murmurs that sent chills down her spine. The voices were faint, almost inaudible, but they seemed to carry a sense of urgency, as if trying to convey a warning. She strained to listen, but the words remained elusive, slipping away like smoke. The murmurs sent chills down her spine, making her shiver despite the warmth of the fire. She rubbed her arms, trying to dispel the goosebumps that had formed. The whispers seemed to come from all around her, filling the room with an eerie presence. It was as if the very air was alive with unseen voices. She told herself it was just the wind playing tricks on her nerves. Alex, however, remained unconvinced. He had always been the skeptic, quick to dismiss anything that couldn't be explained logically. But even he seemed uneasy, his usual confidence shaken by the strange occurrences. He attributed the whispers to the settling of the old cabin and the shadows to the flickering firelight. His rational explanations provided some comfort, but they couldn't completely dispel the fear that had taken root. The cabin was old after all, and it was natural for it to make noises as it adjusted to the temperature changes. Mark, though, his eyes wide and darting around the room, seemed to hear and see the same things that Emily did. His usual bravado was gone, replaced by a palpable fear. He kept glancing at the windows as if expecting something to appear at any moment. The tension in the room was thick, and it was clear that they were all on edge. The seeds of fear had been sown. The once cozy cabin now felt like a place of danger, its shadows hiding unknown threats. The friends who had come seeking adventure and camaraderie now found themselves facing an unseen menace. The night stretched on, and with it, the sense of dread grew stronger, wrapping around them like a shroud. Later that night, Emily lay awake, listening to the sounds of the old cabin settling around her. The wooden beams groaned as if they were alive, whispering secrets of the past. She tried to convince herself it was just the house, but a sense of unease gnawed at her. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows and making the floorboards creak. Each gust seemed to carry with it a mournful cry, a lament from the depths of the night. Emily pulled the covers tighter around her, seeking comfort in their warmth. She could have sworn she heard whispers again, this time closer, as if someone or something was just beyond the thin veil of her mosquito net. The whispers were indistinct, like a conversation she wasn't meant to hear. Her heart raced as she strained to catch any recognizable words. Suddenly, a cold draft swept through the room, chilling her to the bone. It was as if the very air had turned against her, carrying with it an icy dread. She shivered uncontrollably, feeling the cold seep into her very soul. The whispers seemed to intensify, swirling around her like a malevolent wind. They grew louder, more insistent, as if demanding her attention. Emily's mind raced with fear and confusion, trying to make sense of the disembodied voices. She sat up in bed, her heart pounding, and peered into the darkness. The room seemed to close in around her, the shadows deepening and shifting. She felt as though she was being watched, every instinct screaming at her to run, but she was paralyzed by fear. The shadows seemed to be moving, shifting and swaying as if alive. They danced on the walls, creating grotesque shapes that played tricks on her mind. Emily's eyes darted around the room, trying to catch a glimpse of whatever was causing the eerie movements. There was no answer, only the sound of her own ragged breathing and the relentless howling of the wind. The silence between the gusts was deafening, amplifying her fear. She felt utterly alone, trapped in a nightmare from which there was no escape. Terror, cold and sharp, gripped her heart. It was a primal fear, one that spoke to the deepest parts of her being. She clutched her chest, trying to steady her breathing, but the panic was overwhelming. She huddled under the thin blankets, her eyes wide with fear, waiting for the first light of dawn. Each minute felt like an eternity, the darkness pressing in on her from all sides. She prayed for the safety of daylight, for the whispers to vanish with the morning sun. The next morning, she told Alex and Mark about the whispers and the shadows, but they dismissed her fears, attributing them to nightmares. They laughed it off, suggesting she had let her imagination run wild. Emily felt a pang of frustration and isolation. Only Mark, his gaze troubled, seemed to take her seriously. He listened intently, his eyes reflecting a shared unease. There was a moment of silent understanding between them, a recognition of something unspoken. He too had experienced something unsettling during the night. S2. He recounted his own encounter with the whispers, the feeling of being watched. It was as if the cabin itself was alive, harboring secrets and spirits from a time long past. Alex? Mark? Emily's voice trembled as she called out, hoping for reassurance. The shadows seemed to mock her, their movements more pronounced in the dim light. She felt a chill run down her spine, the sense of dread returning with full force. In a desperate attempt to dispel the darkness, Emily lit a candle. The flickering flame cast a warm glow, pushing back the shadows. For a moment, she felt a semblance of safety, the whispers receding into the background. Alex and Mark joined her, their faces pale and drawn. They huddled together, seeking comfort in each other's presence. The night had taken its toll on all of them, leaving a lingering sense of unease. Emily decided to document her experiences in a journal, hoping to make sense of the night's events. She wrote down every detail, the whispers, the shadows, the cold draft. It was a way to process her fear, to find some semblance of control. As the clock ticked slowly, the hours dragged on. The cabin seemed to hold its breath, the oppressive atmosphere weighing heavily on them. They waited for the dawn, the promise of a new day, offering a glimmer of hope. Finally, the first light of dawn broke through the trees, dispelling the darkness. The whispers faded, the shadows retreated, and the cabin seemed to exhale a sigh of relief. Emily felt a weight lift from her shoulders, the terror of the night giving way to the promise of a new day. They stepped outside, embracing the warmth of the sun. The world seemed brighter, more alive, the horrors of the night fading into memory. Emily knew they had faced something inexplicable, but together, they had found the strength to endure. With a determined expression, Emily resolved to uncover the secrets of the cabin. She knew the whispers and shadows were more than just figments of her imagination. There was a story to be told, and she was determined to find the truth. As they prepared for the day, a sense of camaraderie and purpose filled the air. They were no longer just visitors in the cabin. They were explorers, ready to face whatever mysteries lay ahead. The night had tested them, but it had also brought them closer together. Emily closed her journal with a sense of resolve. The whispers in the dark had awakened something within her, a curiosity and determination to uncover the truth. She knew the journey ahead would be challenging, but she was ready to face it head-on. With her friends by her side, Emily ventured into the forest, ready to uncover the secrets that lay hidden in the shadows. The whispers in the dark had been a warning, but they had also ignited a fire within her. She was no longer afraid. She was ready to face whatever came next. While exploring the dusty attic of the cabin, Mark stumbled upon an old leather-bound diary tucked away in a cobweb-filled corner. The attic was a treasure trove of forgotten memories, filled with old trunks, broken furniture, and relics from a bygone era. Mark's curiosity was piqued as he carefully pulled the diary from its hiding place. The leather cover cracked and worn from age. The diary belonged to a young woman named Sarah, who had lived in the cabin with her family over a century ago. The pages were yellowed and fragile, filled with Sarah's neat, cursive handwriting. Each entry was a window into her life, her hopes, and her fears. Mark felt a strange connection to this woman from the past, as if her words were reaching out to him across the decades. As Mark read through the faded entries, a sense of dread washed over him. Sarah's words painted a picture of a life filled with joy and sorrow, but also with an undercurrent of something dark and sinister. The more he read, the more he felt an inexplicable chill, as if the very air around him had grown colder. Sarah's entries spoke of strange occurrences in the cabin, objects moving on their own, disembodied voices, and chilling whispers that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. She described how the once cozy and welcoming cabin had become a place of fear and uncertainty. The family would hear footsteps in the dead of night, see shadows flitting across the walls, and feel an oppressive presence that seemed to watch their every move. She wrote of her family's growing fear and their belief that the cabin was haunted by restless spirits. They tried to rationalize the events, blaming the wind or their own imaginations. But deep down, they knew something was terribly wrong. The fear grew with each passing day, and the once happy family began to unravel under the strain. Mark showed the diary to Emily and Alex, his voice tight with apprehension as he read aloud Sarah's chilling words. The room seemed to grow darker as he spoke, the weight of Sarah's experiences pressing down on them. Emily and Alex listened in stunned silence, their faces pale and drawn.
It's just the ramblings of a superstitious woman. Alex's voice cut through the tension, his skepticism a stark contrast to the fear that gripped the others.
Alex, ever the skeptic, scoffed at the diary, dismissing it as the ramblings of a superstitious woman. He refused to believe that there could be any truth to Sarah's tales, convinced that it was all a product of her imagination. But even as he spoke, there was a flicker of doubt in his eyes, a hint that perhaps he wasn't as certain as he claimed. Emily, however, felt a shiver run down her spine. She couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to Sarah's words, something that resonated with her own experiences in the cabin. The eerie atmosphere, the unexplained noises, the sense of being watched, it all felt too real to be mere coincidence. The diary, with its detailed accounts and palpable fear, felt all too real. Each entry was a testament to Sarah's growing terror, her desperate attempts to understand and combat the malevolent forces that plagued her family. Emily could almost hear Sarah's voice trembling with fear as she poured her heart out onto the pages. As the days passed, the events described in Sarah's diary began to mirror their own experiences. It started with small things, a misplaced object, a strange noise in the night. But soon, the occurrences became more frequent and more disturbing. It was as if the cabin itself was coming alive, reacting to their presence in ways that defied explanation. Objects went missing only to reappear in strange places. A book that had been left on the table would be found on a shelf. A chair that had been pushed in would be pulled out. It was as if an unseen hand was toying with them, moving things around just to unsettle them. Footsteps echoed in the hallway when they were alone in the cabin. The sound was unmistakable. The creak of the floorboards, the soft thud of footsteps. They would rush to see who was there, only to find the hallway empty. The air thick with an eerie silence. And the whispers, those chilling whispers, grew louder, more insistent, as if the unseen entity was trying to communicate with them. The whispers seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, filling the room with a sense of dread. They spoke of things long forgotten, secrets buried deep within the walls of the cabin. Mark, Emily, and Alex found themselves drawn into a mystery that spanned generations, a haunting that refused to be ignored. The diary had opened a door to the past, and now there was no turning back.